Hello and welcome to the program. Thank you for choosing to invest your time with us. I am Imoni Amarere. A few days ago, an unmanned aerial vehicle, also known as drone, belonging to the Nigerian Army in an apparent miscalculation in its fight against terrorism, dropped bombs on a village, Tudun Biri, in Igabi local government area of Kaduna State. The bombs reportedly killed scores of innocent civilians, including women and children. 87 persons are said to have been killed and 76 others wounded and hospitalized in the accidental bombing of the village. There are no accurate figures as at yet as to how many are actually dead and how many are still in hospitals. But according to the army, which owned up to the error, it acted on intelligence about the presence of bandits who were embedded with civilians in the village. Unfortunately, they hit villagers who were celebrating one of their religious festivals. The village and survivors of the bombing have since been playing host to a series of visits, including the Chief of Army Staff, Minister of Defense, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, and the Vice President himself, Alhaji Kashim Shettima, amongst other high-ranking government officials. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has already ordered an investigation into the tragic incident, while directing immediate steps to rebuild the community, complete with modern facilities. However, military analysts say the Tudun Biri tragedy was one too many and could have been avoided if only vital lessons were learnt from similar previous fatal mistakes and errors by the Nigerian military. Amnesty International Nigeria has in fact described the incident as, quote, recklessness arising from a consistent failure to hold the military to account for a long list of what it says are atrocities and unlawful killing of civilians, which are becoming routine. In the last 1 year or thereabout, there have been at least 3 major similar mishaps involving the military. On December 18, 2022, an airstrike by the Air Force killed 64 people in Mutunji village in Zamfara State. And just about a month later, on January 24, 2023, a military airstrike killed over 40 herders in Doma in Nasarawa State. That same month, dozens of vigilantes were also reportedly killed by another military airstrike in Galadima, Kogo in Niger State. The Tudun Biri incident is said to be the deadliest after the 2017 airstrike on Ran village in Borno State, which killed about 115 civilians. All the accidents have been attributed to errors of judgment. The Nigerian military is known for its high level of discipline, thoroughness, and professionalism. So what could be the challenge in these various situations? Why the frequent errors? Do they have anything to do with inadequate training and knowledge of the operations of the manned and unmanned aerial vehicles? Is it a lack of familiarity with the operational terrain? Or is it the failure of intelligence or even poor interpretation of received intelligence? Is it an honest human error that sometimes happens in war situations? The big question is, how can the affected communities in all these cases be helped to regain some of what they have lost? How can future occurrences be avoided? And what ultimately is the way forward for the military in Nigeria? as far as these errors are concerned. These are some of the issues we'll be looking at today on the program. And of course, we're joined right here in the studio and virtually by those who should know and those who have some inside knowledge of how these things work. Here in the studio, I'm joined by Air Commodore Abayomi Balogun, retired. Air Commodore Abayomi Balogun was a combat pilot. He was at the time Director of Training at the Nigeria Air Force Headquarters and a war tactician. Thank you so much for joining us. We also joined virtually, joining us all the way from Enugu in southeast Nigeria, Captain Bish Johnson, a retired U.S. Army officer, and he is also a national defense and security strategist. Captain Bish, thank you for finding time to join us. Captain, you will need to unmute so that we can hear you right here in the studio.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Okay,
welcome.
Thank you for having me, and good afternoon to my co-panelist that is in the studio. This is my second or third time meeting him again.
Great. You all operate on the same axis, as it were. All right, we also hope that to be joined by Dr. Yahuza Gesso, who is a security and logistics specialist. Dr. Gesso will be joining us shortly. Right, so let's go on a very short break. And when we return, we'll be delving into all the issues.
The victims will be taken care of under the canopy of the Polaco initiative. We will commence work by next month, and that community will be the first community to be rebuilt in the northwest sub-region. The government is fully committed towards completely eradicating banditry and armed kidnapping. And be rest assured that the federal government stands by the community affected and the government and people of Kaduna State on this unfortunate incident. It's already directed by Mr. President. An investigation is being conducted with a view to preventing a reoccurrence of the incident, and we expect a report to be submitted within the shortest possible time.
With the report emerging, I feel it is very essential to come physically to the ground, first to commiserate with the people of Tudun Biri that suffered the unfortunate incident of the Nigerian Army drone strike on the 3rd of December 2023, leading to loss of lives. The Nigerian Army as a responsible organ of government and organization is willing to support law-abiding citizens. More so that the unfortunate incident that happened on Sunday occur as a result of error on the part of Nigerian Army personnel. So we are ready to take responsibility for the medical bills of those ones in the hospital and also provide other support to the entire community so that they can live their life more worthwhile.
From the leader of the community, and the figure that he gave was close to 80. That is what he said, of casualties that were buried. As for that which received treatment in the hospital, I recall the interview with the doctor, and he said 71, after which one person died, making it 70. So we can say 81 killed and 70 receiving treatment. For protocols, there will be need for processes to be improved upon. And this, I assure you, we will put in place to ensure that in future we have near to zero occurrences. Whatever group is coming up and saying whatever calculations that they have imagined in their minds, I can tell you that it is faulty, it is in error, and it is unpatriotic. I can assure you we will make sure that we get more training. But for now, we have encouraged communities to see something and say something. And it will help us in analyzing the threat that we see on the ground. Our heartfelt condolences as a force over the losses.
The thing happened around 9:30. We are in Maulud, and we have gathered a lot of people, children and women. We are there. So we have seen the aeroplane without lights. So on that very day, soon as possible, the aeroplane come back again and throw the bomb again.
I think the number of people that were buried yesterday were just about 80. The number of people that were buried, both male and female. There are Christians and Muslims living here, including the Christians were affected. Some of them died. The chief of staff, army staff is here, and he has commiserated with us, and we feel highly honored. They have to alleviate the sufferings that the families are going to go through.
Very unfortunate incident in Tudun Biri in Kaduna State, Igabi local government area of Kaduna State. And from the horse's mouths, you have heard all of it, from the vice president to the local chief of Tudun Biri, and indeed some of the victims or survivors of that incident. We have heard all of it. But we now want to delve into the issues that may have resorted to this. And here in the studio is Air Commodore Abayomi Balogun, retired. And I'm joined online from Enugu State by Captain Bish Johnson, who is a retired Army officer of the U.S. Army and National Defense and Security Strategist. Captain Bish, let me begin with you from your knowledge of military operations. Could this have been avoided?
Yes, thank you. And once again, thanks for having me. Yes, most accidents are avoidable if certain precautions and measures are put in place. Particularly this particular incident, as we heard from the Chief of Defense Staff, he has said that it's as a result of error from Army personnel. And so it's possible that such an incident could have been avoided if certain measures were taken.
All right, so what, in your view, could have resulted in this error? Because the Chief of Army Staff clearly accepted that it was an error on the part of his personnel.
Yes. There are several factors that may contribute to, incidents like this. But having heard from the Chief of Defense Staff, he has narrowed it down to just one particular factor, and that is human error. And sometimes human errors as a result of, lack of proper training, sometimes fatigue on the part of the personnel.
Captain, are you still with us?
And so I don't, can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, I don't know the level of training and the experience some of these drone operators have acquired over the years. So I can't speak to that. But having heard from the Chief of Defense Staff,
well, we're having some challenges. Yeah, go ahead, Captain.
The investigators should focus their attention on trying to determine how human error had contributed to this tragedy.
Okay, let me come here to the studio. Air Commodore Abayomi Balogun. Okay. Yes, you were a war tactician. You were a combat pilot during your time.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, what's the difference between the manned and unmanned area vehicles and
Thank you very much.
the operations?
Yes, thank you very much. My sympathy still goes out to the victims and to the members of the armed forces. The difference between the manned and unmanned is simple. The manned ones are operated by somebody inside the cockpit who flies, who takes the final decision on whatever you need to do, especially when you are talking about fighter jets. Now, in the unmanned case, unmanned area vehicles are the ones that you don't have a human being inside. Rather, the human being controlling it is inside a cubicle back home, who sees whatever that unmanned aircraft is seeing, because the unmanned aircraft is equipped with a camera. And that camera has the capability of downstreaming to the control. So the controller is looking, and whatever the unmanned vehicle is seeing, the guys behind the control is seeing. The man behind the control usually gives the final instruction to the drone. The drone, the unmanned drone, will not strike by himself. There are two types of drones. The ones that are armed, in this case, this one was armed, and the ones that are unarmed. The ones that are unarmed are just for reconnaissance, intelligence gathering. But today we have armed ones where somebody can sit in his office and operate and give the command to attack whatever he wants to attack. So the one that was operated, this last one, was an unmanned drone, but armed, which permits that firing to have taken place.
Now, the reason I asked that question is a lot of concerns have been raised. If it was, or if it is possible for the person controlling the unarmed drone to see what is really on ground, to see the target, how come he didn't see women, children, and other persons who are unarmed on ground before downloading his bomb?
Yes, that's why the CDS and everybody have said human error. Human error, because the technology in those things permits whoever is behind it to see what is happening. And when you read it very well, you know whether to take such action or not to take. But then errors of judgment do happen. I have been involved in this kind of situation when we were fighting in Sierra Leone. And I was told there were some boats crossing the lagoon. They are carrying rebels. So go there and deny them the cross. Take out the rebels, legitimate target. But when I got there, I saw several boats. I saw several human beings entering the boats, crossing the lagoon. And I say, how do I differentiate between the ones carrying the rebels and the ones carrying the civilians? Very difficult, especially when the rebels are not in uniform. So what did I do was, since I have a doubt, I'm not certain which of the boats is carrying the civilians and which one is carrying the rebels, I came back home. Because there will always be another time. Our training says, once there's any doubt in your judgment whether civilians could be involved, you don't take that action. So, but then, we are investigating. Until the army and the authorities conclude this investigation, we will thoroughly know what really went wrong. And then I'm sure preventive measures will be provided.
The reports available indicate that 2 bombs were dropped. And they were not dropped at the same time. I think maybe a few minutes apart. So was that not enough for the person who was controlling the drone not to have assessed the situation, possibly after the first bomb was dropped, to say, look, these are not the terrorists and bandits that maybe intelligence would have given as the reason for the first bomb?
Thank you very much again. Because you had Captain Beach said, what was the training level of that operator itself? What was his experience? And you remember that the Army aviation just started. You can't compare that to the Air Force aviation that's been on since 1964. If I was still in the service and I was to handle that, the first thing that I think went wrong was that judgment, that final decision shouldn't have been left in the hands of the controller alone. Usually, there is a war room. There's supposed to be a war room. The drone is saying, the people in the war room are saying, the people in the war room, because it's not only one person, gives the final decision after all of them have agreed that this is a legitimate target, let us go. If you remember when Osama bin Laden was killed in Pakistan, President Barack Obama was in the ops room. He wasn't alone. There were other people, and they were watching live. They gave the final decision to the SEALs. SEALs go ahead and take the action. So I don't know now whether we do that, but from me, I've not seen it done, and we leave all the decisions in the hands of that tactical man, but it shouldn't be. So I think going forward, that's one of the things we should be looking at.
All right, let's see if we can get Captain Bish back online now, because we need to talk about modern technology. I mean, the drone is actually a modern technology in warfare. Possibly at the time Air Commodore Abayomi was in the Air Force, for instance, the technology had not advanced as much as it is today. Now, the drones are supposed to be more precise than any other area surveillance vehicles. Is that a correct analysis?
No, absolutely not. It's not a correct analysis that the drones are supposed to be more precise. I think it all depends on the kind of drones that is being operated and the kind of manned aircraft that is also being operated. The preciseness of aircraft depends on who made them and what equipment they are carrying. It does not necessarily depend on whether they are manned or manned. I listened to the Air Commodore. I think all the analysis that he has provided so far to me makes a whole lot of sense. The Nigerian Army, at first when this information came out that the Nigerian Army took responsibility for the strike, I was taken aback because I know Nigerian Army does not have an aviation sector. Most area bombardment from Nigerian military has always been the Nigerian Air Force that has carried out that. The Army can call in the Air Force for close air support, and Air Force will go in there and back them up from the air. So it's when the incident began to unfold that we now knew that the Nigerian Army is now flying drones. So that makes the aviation department of the Nigerian Army a very recent one and a new one. So I don't know to what extent they have been trained. I don't know the level of their experience. Their training and experience will not be equated to that of the Nigerian Air Force that has been doing area operations for several decades. On the issue of who makes that decision, I think those are some of the facts that will likely come out after the investigation. If the investigation is thorough, if it's independent, if we're honest with the investigation, because we have to be honest, we have to be thorough, we have to be independent if we truly want to prevent this kind of incidents from taking place in the future. Because this kind of occurrences are not doing us any good. Instead, they are projecting the Nigerian military in a very bad light. We know that they are better than that. And so I don't know how the decisions are made. The decisions of this nature, like the Air Commodore said, is not something that you're going to leave in the hands of one person. There's always a group of people, all of them are seeing the same thing that the drone is seeing. And then the most senior officer in that war room is the one that gives the command for such a strike to take place. And so I don't know if there is a war room in place, whether this is carried out by one operator. When the investigation is truly carried out in a very effective, independent, and honest manner, we'll be able to get all the facts out. And hopefully measures could be put in place to prevent occurrences of this nature from happening in the future.
Now, we know the Nigerian military to be a very disciplined force. We know the Nigerian military to be very thorough and very professional in its duties and responsibilities. But in the last 12 months or thereabouts, there have been at least, I mean, this last one makes it the fourth such accidental bombings of civilians, of persons who are not engaged in any combat or in any terrorist acts and all of that. Now, the Chief of Army Staff says it depended on intelligence. Could there have been an intelligence failure in this particular situation? Was there intelligence failure in the three other previous incidents?
Yes. When the Chief of Defense Staff said there is human error is not only particularly to those who are operating the drones. Human error can also come from intelligence. What kind of intelligence was provided? What exact coordinate? Because airstrikes are carried out using coordinates, right? That's why it's usually a joint operation. You have ground forces. Ground forces will determine the coordinate because they are closest to the threat, and then they will forward that coordinate to the air wing or the Air Force, and the Air Force will use that coordinate to be able to carry out their strike. In this instance, I don't know how that intelligence was provided. If intelligence is faulty, this kind of things is going to happen. So collectively, human error also encompasses, faulty intelligence, particularly if the intelligence came from a human source. As you are aware, there are various, sources of intel, and the human intel is one of those sources. So if human intelligence is involved and they didn't provide accurate location, the nature of the threat, and the correct coordinates where the threat is, whether the threat is fixed or is on the move, all those things taken collectively can lead to a tragic incident as the one that just happened. Again, everything we are saying is mere speculation because I don't have the inside information of what actually transpired. And that is exactly why the steps that the government has taken is the right step by ordering an investigation to take place. And that is the first thing and the right thing to do, is to carry out investigation, find out what happened, and then try to put measures in place to prevent such things from happening again in the future.
All right, let me bring in Air Commodore here. You talked earlier on about two types of drones.
Yeah.
The reconnaissance drone, which is unarmed,
Yeah.
and the armed drone. The assumption that many people will make was that perhaps that intelligence that was fed back to the base
Yes.
was actually one that was captured by the reconnaissance drone. If that was the case, could that unmanned vehicle, that unmanned and unarmed vehicle,
Yes.
could it have sent wrong signals to the war room?
Not really, because before you even deploy the drones, you should have some level of intelligence, and then the drones will go to confirm it. The drone must confirm what has come in before it takes any action. So like you said, human intelligence, that is where it starts from. From the bottom, there are people within that area, except we are not doing the right thing. There are people within that locality who should have told us that this is a prayer session. In fact, sometimes we even give warning that something is going to happen in such areas. Yes, early warning. So if we were doing the real intelligence job, it should have started from the ground. The human intelligence from the ground will have provided us with what we will need to plan. It is when it comes to that war room, and the war room analyze the intelligence and then strategize on what to do with the intelligence. Normally, the drone, if you first send the unmanned one, is to confirm the intelligence you have. The drone that will go will confirm it and say, yes, it is proper. We have to take action. If it was the unmanned, it was the armed one, it will also reconfirm before you pull the trigger. So intelligence had played a major role in most of the accidents that has occurred. And that's why I have been preaching that we'll change our approach from what we are doing now to a better way, where everybody is included. If you start gathering your intelligence from the bottom, in the villages, within the communities, this kind of collateral damage wouldn't have occurred because they are there. Even if you are looking for bandits, they see the bandits. They know the kidnappers. They are not ghosts. So those guys at the grassroots are supposed to be our first source of intelligence. The drones, the unmanned vehicle or man are supposed to go and reconfirm what we have. So I think the process of analyzing our intelligence is still faulty. Because if you have good intelligence, you will get there. But if the intelligence cycle is not well processed and analyzed, you will have such things.
So in this particular situation, as with the other three from December 2022 until now,
Yes.
do you think that, for instance, that intelligence may have been genuine, but maybe interpretation of that intelligence and its processing, as you put it,
Yes.
could have had some missteps
Yes.
along the line?
Especially, let me say, you are given an intelligence on bandits, and you say there were bandits in this village now, Tudun Biri. We saw bandits, and you sent the message. Should the attacking force, either Army or Navy or Air Force, should they go straight based on that intelligence? No. They must go and reconfirm. The analysts will look at the source of the intelligence, analyze it, and say, you go and reconfirm this. Because now, if you see a bandit in this village today, if you see bandits who are always mobile, who are always on the move, and somebody gives you that intelligence, we have seen bandits in this village. So you just, 30 minutes later or 1 hour later, you expect the bandits to still be there? No, they are mobile. They are moving. So if you act based on that intelligence, you will commit crime. You must go back and confirm that intelligence before you strike. So we need to do a lot more on how we synthesize the intelligence cycle. There is a whole lot of process that if you miss one, you will have collateral damage. So I think we need to look into that more, and then success will be ours.
Now, Captain Bish, there are those who have suggested, for instance, that maybe there wasn't enough sharing of intelligence, enough sharing of information between and amongst the arms of the Nigerian military service. And that perhaps if this was more proactive, the cases that were mentioned, Zamfara, Niger, and even Doma here in Nasarawa State, perhaps these situations could have been avoided.
Yeah, sure. Sharing of intelligence from various intel gathering organizations and up to policy and decision makers is a very critical one, and is a very, very important one. But in this particular instance, I don't know how that could have prevented this particular incident from taking place, because the issue here now is not that intel was not shared. I think the issue here now is that there could have been faulty intelligence that was relayed to the higher up. Like the Air Commodore said, I think we have to put more emphasis on how we collect our intel, how those intel is analyzed and interpreted, and how they are eventually utilized. We should be a little more conservative in doing that, so that we can reduce, this level of, mishaps. The most tragic thing for any citizen is to die in the hands of their own armed forces. These are people that are established to protect you, and unfortunately, you die in their hands as a result of, some kind of avoidable error. That is a very, very unfortunate thing that could happen to anybody. Yes, it's very important that all the various agencies are working together. And I think what most countries do is that there's always that central body that coordinates all these agencies that collect intel. They bring it to one particular central place where the intel is analyzed properly, and then properly disseminated, on the need to know basis. By the way, it's not every intel that is sent to everybody. There are people that we have need to use that intel. So you ensure that that particular intel goes to them. So we need to have that, that collection point where all this intel, comes in before they go out.
Now we are in an
And
era
let me,
of artificial intelligence, Captain Bish. How can that help in better intelligence gathering and precision attacks and precision actions?
well, you see, artificial intelligence is also technology. Even the drone that we're talking about also have some artificial intelligence that is embedded in it. But artificial intelligence, as good as it is and as good as it sounds right now, if you don't have the right type of people to utilize it, you will still have this kind of problems. So we still have to have our people properly trained, make sure that those who are in this kind of critical jobs, have some level of experience, put checks and balances, in place. Like the air commander said, the operator should not be the one making that decision. I'm not saying that the operator was the one that made this decision or that there is no war room that go through all these things. But we have to make sure that there is that layer of decision making that will be put in place, before such critical life and death action will take place. So if we put all these things into account, we will minimize, the level of and the incidences of this kind of occurrences. There was something that was mentioned earlier that the bomb, there was the first airstrike, and then another airstrike came again. Yes, something like that could easily happen because they were still acting on that same intelligence that they had previously received that led to the first strike. And from their, after action assessment, they may have discovered that, look, we didn't neutralize all of the threats. So that now led to the second attack. Between the first attack and the second attack, there was no counterintelligence that went back to those decision makers to say, look, the threat the intelligence that was previously provided is faulty. Therefore, cease action. And some of all these things are driven by, the need for quick and immediate response. They may have been told, look, there is an influx of bandits from so and so place into so and so place. And then therefore there is a need for that quick response. You can see that instead of mobilizing ground troops and logistics to go down and confront the threat, they opted to use drones because that is the best way for them to get to that particular type of terrain, at the fastest and the shortest period of time. And so they now have to deploy drones to get to the threat as quickly as possible. That could also have been a factor. They need for quick response to the threat.
What role does knowledge of an operational terrain play in all of this? Because, I mean, in strategic planning, you need to know your environment properly, master the environment, have a very deep knowledge of the environment to succeed in whatever operation you are carrying out. So what kind of terrain are we talking about here? And what's the level of understanding?
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning. You mentioned something that every soldier should know. Before you go to war, you must know your enemy. You must study your enemy in detail. If not, you are wasting your time. If you know your enemy very well, and then come back and know yourself, know your capabilities, you can win any war. Where what you said, terrain, comes in. When you are looking at your enemy in total, how does he live? What are his characteristics? What is the terrain where he will follow? What is likely course of actions? You must think of all that before you venture to go and win. If you go to the battlefield and say you want to win, you will never win. You must first win at home where you have studied that enemy. In fact, to defeat that enemy, you must be the enemy. Make yourself that enemy and put yourself in his shoes and look at him and say, what will he do? You must be able to predict that enemy. Now, all that military men must put in mind that you don't just wake up and go to war. And that's what Captain Bish said, that is there any place where all these factors are brought together? Intelligence from everywhere are brought together in a room where the Army is, Air Force is, Navy, everybody, including other security agencies, where they analyze and say, yes, we are going to this Tumbo place. Is there civil defense around that place? They will call, because civil defense is represented in that big office. And it goes down to the root and say, what is happening? They must get information. And that's why I said earlier that what we need to do is to change from this top to bottom approach and go to bottom approach. You get all the intelligence from the bottom. It comes up to you where you finally take that decision. And it does not go to one person. It does not go to one service. It goes to something they call multi-agency coordination and control center, where the armed forces are represented, where all the other security agencies are represented, like in this hall. And then the information comes. And we look at it, who should handle this? Air Force, Army, Civil Defense, Immigration, Customs, we are all there. And the responsive person will be tasked, the first respondent. If it's beyond him, the next one is. But that coordination and integration of our resources is what we are having problem with. The Army has drones now. The Air Force has drones. The Army will have helicopter now. The Air Force has helicopters. The Navy have helicopters. At what point do we look? All this belongs to Nigeria. At what point do we say, okay, let's use the Army drone? No, the Army drone does not have that capability. Let's use the Air Force own. We must speak in one voice. If we are talking about synergy, synergy is not just by saying it. Synergy is planning on the ground before you step out. If you don't plan, you can never synergize. You can never synergize. That attack, for me, is avoidable. It's avoidable because we will have been able to see it. Now, our Captain B said there, technology, that's the way to go. That drone, whatever it was seeing, the operator shouldn't have has pulled the trigger. It will have been joint effort. That's okay, go ahead. We have seen, we have confirmed. And for him to first drop the first bomb, went away and came back. That is totally unacceptable to me, because the first one, you must first confirm the battle damage assessment. I dropped this weapon. How does it work? Did it damage? Is it as expected? I had made mistake. I will not do it 2 times. But there was no battle damage assessment before the next set, the next round. And if there was somebody in the multi-agency coordination center who was saying, we call the guys, please stop that action. You made a mistake, please don't do it again. Come back home. But we left everything in the hand of one agency. So there is need for us to come back, re-synergize, and integrate all our resources together, and then we can do better.
Captain Bish, this has happened, and we have seen the number of very high government officials who have been visiting both Tudun Biri, the village, the community, and the survivors of this accident in the hospitals where they are being treated. What do you think needs to be done at this point in time? What, apart from the investigation that the president has ordered and the promise he has made to reconstruct this community, what other steps do you think need to be taken? Because as you put it earlier, perhaps the most painful thing is for your own army, your own military to be the one that is killing your own citizens?
Yeah, sure. I think their needs have to be categorized in immediate, medium, and long-term needs. We have to look at their immediate needs now. The government has to assist the families of the victims, those who lost their lives in, burying their loved ones and conducting their funerals. Those who are injured, who are still in the hospital. There's a need for government to all equally assist in taking up those medical bills, just like the military has already said that they will do that. Also, we look at those their immediate needs. Even providing food, there's no shelter, providing shelter, making sure that, we are somehow ameliorating the pains of the families of these victims in the short term. Now, in the medium term, they can look at, issues about like those who are going back to schools, children that are going back to schools, because some of these people, there could be children that may have lost both parents. And so means of livelihood is already cut off from that. So we have to look at, those kind of people, those people who are in that, those situations. And then in the long run is what the president has talked about, rebuilding the entire community with modern infrastructure. I think so far, what is being said by the government seem to have indicated the level of sensitivity that the government has shown in this particular incident. Now, it remains to be seen whether that sensitivity is going to, lead into serious long-term permanent commitment on the part of government to come through with all these things that the government has said that they are going to do.
Commodore, some people have suggested that, look, victims should be compensated. Those who died have died, and those who survived the bombing may have, as Captain Beach put it, may have lost. Some may have lost parents, children, cousins, brothers, sisters, mothers, what have you. And then, so what kind of compensation can anyone be asking for?
I don't know the compensation because the government has spoken. They are going to rebuild the community.
Is that enough?
Well, is it enough? Other things will go with it. But me, I feel we should look beyond that community because if government is handling it, yeah. But then, how do we ensure that it does not occur again? Because if we don't do that, it happens again, we take the same thing to go and replicate and say we will rebuild the community, well, then we'll rebuild the whole Nigeria. But what do we do to make sure this kind of thing does not happen again? It's where I will want Nigeria to concentrate on. I say categorically that the synergy between the security agencies is still not as tight as it should be. I still say again that I cannot see anywhere they are planning and working together to achieve the same aim. So those major factors we need to address. We need to create a space where they must work together, where they must plan together. Now, we saw Army, everybody was wondering who took the mission. Is it Air Force? Air Force said, no, be me. Who said? Who did? Army came up. No. We should have known in that big office who we have assigned that target to. So the inter-service rivalry is still there. Every service wants to claim that I have done this, I have done that, and that's why each service has all these capabilities. The Air Force has that, the Army has, Navy, they are duplicated capabilities all over the place, waste of resources. But then, if you know that this job of using drone, we assign it to the Air Force, why does Army need to have it? I don't know what the number they have got, but Air Force had drones. Air Force had been developing drones. What I think the Army needed in the aviation right now is utility aircraft that will move the troops from one place to the other. Helicopter gunship that will be with the battalion so that when they are moving, and why do they need to do that? Because the Air Force cannot provide for them. Yes, Air Force cannot detach a utility aircraft now because they don't have, and say, Army, take, use it. In ECOMOG, we had a Super Puma helicopter that we detached from the Air Force and attached to the Army. It was moving ammunition, moving food, moving fuel. So issue of ambush is reduced on the road because the troops don't have to do that. The helicopter was there for them. Can the Air Force today detach some helicopters and give to them? Now, so we look at it. These core competencies that all the services and the security agencies have, where do we pull all of them together? Economy of effort. And then concentrate them against our common enemy, rather than this man doing it. So that's what I would want us to be looking at, sir.
Thank you so much, Air Commodore Abayomi Balogun, retired combat pilot, was director of training at the Nigerian Air Force headquarters, and a war tactician. Thank you so much for joining us. And Captain Bish Johnson, a retired Army officer in the United States Army, a national defense and security strategist. Thank you for joining us all the way from Enugu in southeastern Nigeria. Do have yourself a wonderful day for the rest of today. And we'll see you again when we bring you a fresh edition of People, Politics, and Power. Bye for now.